September 12, 1944, 4 miles east of the Seine River crossing, France. Sergeant Michael Torres crouched beside his Sherman tank, reading an intelligence report that might as well have been his obituary. The numbers told a story of calculated slaughter. A German Panther could penetrate his Sherman's armor from 1,500 yards out. Torres's 75mm gun. It needed to close to 400 yards for city blocks just to have a prayer of piercing the Panther's frontal plate. Over the past 72 hours, a single Panther had eliminated 14 Allied vehicles, 14 crews, 70 men who'd eaten breakfast and never saw dinner. American field manuals preached the gospel, maintained formation, massed your fire, execute by the book. But Torres had assembled these Shermans on the factory floor in Pennsylvania. He understood their capabilities and their fatal limitations, and as he mapped trajectories in his field notebook that humid evening, he recognized something the Pentagon tacticians had completely missed. Not superior firepower, not heavier armor, a trigonometry problem, one that would transform 6-to-1 casualty ratios into something the Wehrmacht never anticipated. The Panther's greatest advantage was about to become its Achilles heel. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button for more buried stories from the history books, the details that actually determined outcomes, and leave a comment telling me your location. I'm always amazed how far these narratives travel. September 10th, 1944, 05 for 5 hours. The staging area 4 miles east of the Seine smelled of diesel exhaust and autumn mud. Morning fog hung thick enough that Michael Torres could barely see past the hull of his M4A3 Sherman. The tank bore the name, Iron Duchess, stenciled in yellow across the 75mm Barola joke from his gunner about their survival odds. Torres didn't find it funny. He'd been attempting to write the same letter to Maria for 30 minutes, scratching out sentences, beginning again. How could you explain to your wife that, after 5 weeks pushing through France, the hardest part wasn't combat itself, it was the anticipation between fights? They'd engaged German reconnaissance vehicles 3 times, destroyed a Panzer for 10 days ago near Chartres. The Sherman had performed exactly 2 specifications: dependable, mobile, adequate. We've got superior numbers, he finally wrote, because it was factual, and because Maria needed reasons to believe he'd return home. Around him, his crew executed their morning routine. Tommy Chen cleaned the breech with methodical precision, wiping every component like he was preparing for inspection rather than potential death. The kid whistled something quietly, probably Sinatra. Tommy always whistled Sinatra when his nerves were acting up. "Sarge, you figure we'll see action?" Tommy asked without pausing his work. Torres folded the letter and slipped it into his breast pocket beside Maria's last correspondence. "Intelligence suggests the Germans are withdrawing. Could be an easy day." It wouldn't be an easy day. Torres could sense it in how Major Patterson had been circling the command post since before dawn, in how radio communications had gone eerily silent for 90 minutes. Something was building. At 0630, Battalion S2 summoned all tank commanders to briefing. Torres walked through the churned field with 13 other sergeants and lieutenants, men who learned to interpret facial expressions better than spoken orders. Nobody was making wisecracks this morning. Major Patterson stood beside a tactical mapboard, his face carrying the weight of a man delivering news he wished he could avoid. He'd fought in Sicily, understood what German armor could accomplish with proper positioning and superior guns. When he spoke, his voice carried the flat affect of someone reading a death sentence. "Gentlemen, we have confirmed presence of a Panther, a USFG, operating in the sector near the Forat di Rambele, callsign, Steel Phantom. Intelligence indicates command by Hauptmann Klaus Richter, credited with 53 confirmed vehicle kills since Kursk. In the last 3 days, this single tank has destroyed 14 Allied vehicles, 4 were Shermans." The briefing tent went silent except for rain beginning to drum against canvas overhead. Patterson revealed a technical comparison, chart side-by-side schematics of the M4A3 Sherman and the Panther AUSFG. Torres had studied these diagrams back in Pennsylvania during crew training, but examining them here, 4 miles from where that Panther waited, made the statistics feel visceral. The M4's 75mm gun can defeat 71mm of armor at 500 yards, Patterson continued. The Panther's frontal armor measures 120mm. The Panther's 75mm KWK-42 L70 can punch through our frontal plate at 1,800 yards. He let that information settle. "ULL need to close to danger close range under 400 yards, and even then you need a precision shot at the turret ring or lower glacis. Torres performed the calculation mentally, the same way he used to compute production schedules back at the Pennsylvania assembly plant. The Panther could eliminate them from nearly a mile away. They needed to approach within 4 football fields, and even then, success required luck. He remembered the factory floor, watching Shermans roll off production lines every 45 minutes. 7 Shermans for every German tank. 10 Shermans 20. The plant supervisor had stated it plainly. We can't match German engineering, son. But we can produce 7 for every one of theirs. Quantity over quality. American industrial capacity versus German technical excellence. It sounded inspiring in a newsreel. It sounded considerably less inspiring when you were inside one of those 7 tanks, designed to be expendable. Tommy Chen raised his hand. Sir, what if we avoid head-to-head engagement? Patterson's expression hardened. You follow established doctrine, Corporal. Doctrine dictates you employ smoke for suppression, advance in formation, and concentrate fire. Dismissed. The tank commanders filed into the rain. Silence prevailed. Torres assembled his crew and studied each face. Tommy with his dog-eared paperback tucked in his jacket. Rodriguez checking his compass. Martinez already calculating vectors in his head. If we execute this by doctrine, Torres said quietly, we're casualties. But if we don't follow orders, we're facing court-martial. He touched a letter in his breast pocket, Maria's handwriting visible through the fabric. He'd promised her he'd come home, but doctrine was going to kill them. And somewhere in the French forests, a German tank commander with 53 kills was waiting in ambush. September 11th, 07 for 5 hours. The American column advanced through the forest roads in textbook formation. 6 Shermans spaced at 50-yard intervals, precisely as doctrine specified. Torres's tank Wolfpack 3 occupied 3rd position through the periscopes. France appeared as a maze of dense woodland, each tree line thick enough to conceal a building. Visibility, 60 yards maximum. Radio static crackled in Torres's headset as the column commander transmitted, Wolfpack 3. This is Wolfpack Actual. Maintain interval discipline. Over. Torres keyed his mic. Wolfpack Actual, Wolfpack 3. Copy that. Inside the Sherman, the atmosphere reeked of oil, sweat, and the metallic scent of ammunition. The M4A3 carried 97 rounds for the 75mm gun, stored in racks throughout turret and hull. The 5-man crew moved with practiced coordination, driver and bow gunner in the front hull, Torres in the commander's cupola, Tommy at gunner position, their loader positioned to service the main gun, 28 miles per hour on pavement, 12 cross-country, 64mm frontal, armor, 38mm on the flanks. Specifications Torres had memorized in Pennsylvania, numbers that seemed sufficient until you understood what they were sufficient against. The lead Sherman Wolfpack 1 rounded a bend in the forest trail at 0751. The sound arrived first. Crack, not like artillery. Sharper, faster. The physics of German high-velocity engineering, traveling at 3,068 feet per second. Then the detonation. Wolfpack 1 simply ceased functioning as a combat vehicle. The 75mm round penetrated the front glacis like tissue paper. The Sherman erupted instantly, flames shooting 40 feet skyward as ammunition ignited inside. Torres's mouth went dry. Halt, reverse. But Wolfpack 2 was already pushing forward, the commander attempting to acquire the target, following doctrine that prescribed advancing and massing fire. Torres never identified where the Panther was positioned, just the outcome. Another crack. Another Sherman struck in the turret at 1,400 yards. The explosion severed the turret from its race. 3 crew killed immediately. 2 more evacuated, uniforms ablaze, screaming back. Full reverse. Torres hammered his fist against the driver's shoulder. The Sherman lurched backward, engines screaming as they reversed into a depression. Through the periscope, Torres searched for the Panther. Nothing, just smoke and trees and the burning remains of 2 American tanks. Tommy's voice shook. Sarge, I can't acquire target. Where is it? I don't know. Torres's hands trembled on the radio handset. They couldn't locate the Panther, couldn't engage what they couldn't see, and retreating would just expose their thinner rear armor. 900 meters away, in a position carefully selected for overlapping kill zones and natural concealment, Hauptmann Klaus Richter observed through his commander's optics. The Zeiss glass was flawless, even at extreme range. German optical precision that transformed distant targets into point-blank shooting. He'd positioned the Panther in a concealed hold-down location, only the turret exposed, with clear sightlines down for separate approach vectors. Ziel, Panzer, 1400 Meter, Klaus stated calmly into his throat mic. His gunner acknowledged, already adjusting for range and windage. The 75mm KWK-42L70 was a weapon of art. Muzzle velocity approaching 3,100 feet per second. Flat trajectory. Devastating penetration. Time to target at this range, 1.6 seconds. The American crews probably never understood what killed them. Klaus pressed the firing trigger. Crack. Through his optics, he observed the tracer arc across the distance. Witnessed the impact. Witnessed another Sherman explode in flames. Clean kill. Professional. Exactly as taught at the Panzer Training Academy Nakladon, he ordered. His loader, Becker, was already moving with mechanical precision, but Klaus was counting. 2 kills, 5 rounds expended, 35 remaining. Each round was precious now, with supply lines disintegrating and the Americans advancing deeper into France daily. Becker's voice came through the intercom, young and eager. Herr Hauptmann, is it true that 1 Panther equals 12 Shermans? Klaus watched the third burning Sherman through his optics. 3 American crews dead in 6 minutes. 15 men who'd woken this morning expecting to see tomorrow. He thought about the propaganda posters throughout Germany, the newsreels showing invincible Panthers crushing Allied armor, the speeches about superior German engineering. The propaganda claims 1 Panther is invincible, Klaus replied quietly. The truth is simpler. German engineering plus proper positioning equals tactical advantage. But advantages expire. He tapped a fuel gauge. Less than 1/3 tank remaining. And Becker, they keep coming. They always keep coming. In the depression, Torres pressed against the turret wall, breathing hard. His crew sat in silence. Tommy's hands trembled on the gun controls. Through the radio, Torres monitored other units calling for support, reporting contact, requesting permission to withdraw. We can't engage that, Tommy whispered. Torres pulled his map, studied the forest geometry, the angles and ranges and approach options. His mind was already processing the problem the way he used to analyze production bottlenecks in Pennsylvania. There had to be a solution. There was always a solution. You just had to change the variables. September 12th, 0145 hours. Torres couldn't sleep. He sat in his tent with a notebook open, sketching by flashlight. Not the frontal assault doctrine demanded, but something fundamentally different. The Panther was powerful frontally, but it was also stationary. Shermans were mobile. What if 4 tanks approached from different vectors simultaneously? What if instead of feeding the Panther targets sequentially, they forced it to prioritize? He drew vectors on paper, calculating speeds and distances. The M4 could achieve 28 miles per hour on roads. The Panther's turret traverse was limited. 45 seconds for full 360-degree rotation manually, 25 seconds with powered traverse. If a Shermans approached from different directions simultaneously, the Panther couldn't engage all of them. It was geometry, pure mathematics, the kind of problem Torres used to solve on the factory floor when assembly lines created bottlenecks. At 0230, he abandoned attempts at sleep and walked to battalion headquarters. Major Patterson was still conscious, sitting at a field desk with casualty reports spread before him. The kerosene lamp cast shadows across his features, aging him a decade. "Sir, I need 5 minutes." Patterson looked up, exhausted. "Sergeant Torres, it's 2:30. I know, sir, but I think I understand how to eliminate that Panther." Patterson gestured toward an empty chair. Torres sat and spread his sketches across the desk. Approach vectors, timing sequences, radio coordination protocols, he explained rapidly, outlining the concept. 1 Sherman fixes frontally with smoke while 3 others flank from different angles. Change the geometry. Transform the Panther's strength into vulnerability. "Sir, the Panther's side armor is only 50 millimeters. Our 75 can defeat that at 700 yards. If we approach from 4 directions simultaneously, it cannot rotate fast enough to engage all of us. We just need to change the mathematics from 1 Panther shoots 6 Shermans sequentially to 1 Panther gets surrounded." Patterson studied the sketches, his expression unreadable. "That's not doctrine, Sergeant. You break formation, you lose coordination, you'll get disoriented in the forest." Risk fratricide. Torres pulled additional detailed diagrams, positions, timing marks, radio procedures. "Sir, I assembled these machines in Pennsylvania. I understand their capabilities. The M4 does 28 miles per hour on roads. We can reposition faster than he can rotate that 45-ton turret. We just need velocity and angles. And if you're incorrect, If one Sherman gets lost in the forest or timing is off by 40 seconds, then we're no worse off than current doctrine, sir, right now. The manual says advance in line and die in line. This way, at least we're making him choose which direction to face. Patterson leaned back, rubbing his temples. Torres could observe him calculating not just tactical probability, but political consequences. Career-ending decisions. The burden of command, where every choice generated casualty reports. Finally, Patterson spoke. You get one opportunity. For tanks. Wolfpack 3, Wolfpack 4, Wolfpack 5, Wolfpack 7, synchronized attack. 053, tomorrow. If you're wrong, Sergeant, those 20 men are your responsibility. Torres found Lieutenant Martinez and Staff Sergeant Williams in their tents 2 hours before dawn. Martinez was already awake, field stripping his sidearm by candlelight. Williams was writing correspondence home, probably to his wife and 3 sons back in Georgia. Torres spread his sketches on Williams's footlocker and briefed them on the plan. We're designating it Georgia Gambit, Torres said. James, you advance frontally, deploy smoke at 1,100 yards. Carlos and I flank from parallel routes at maximum velocity. We strike from 4 directions within 50 seconds of each other. He can only face one direction at a time. Martinez studied the sketches, his finger tracing the approach vectors. Timing must be precise. If one of us arrives prematurely, the Panther eliminates us before the others arrive. That's why we synchronize timepieces and use radio time hacks every 40 seconds. We maintain coordination. Williams looked at Torres with the calm steadiness of a man who'd survived for amphibious landings. And if Patterson's correct, if we get disoriented in the forest and lose coordination, then we adapt. But James, you've got 3 sons waiting. You really want to drive straight at that 75mm and hope doctrine works this time. Williams folded his letter and secured it in his breast pocket. No, I don't. They planned through the remaining darkness. Radio frequencies, timing marks, fallback positions, fields of fire. Tommy sat quietly in the corner, sketching the plan in his notebook. For small Shermans surrounding one larger tank, the impossible geometry that might preserve their lives. 900 meters away, Klaus Richter stood in his commander's cupola, observing the pre-dawn darkness through binoculars. He'd noticed something yesterday. American reconnaissance probing for different approach vectors instead of one. They were learning, adapting. He told Becker, they're becoming smarter. That makes them more lethal. But the Panther was low on fuel now. 28 gallons remaining, barely sufficient for 15 miles of movement. Klaus could reposition once, perhaps twice more, before he'd be immobilized. The advantage was narrowing. The trap was becoming a prison. September 12th, 0520 hours. Torres stood beside Iron Duchess, watching his crew load the 75mm gun, 97 rounds ready. Engine idling. Tommy was pale but steady, his hands no longer shaking. Torres keyed his radio. Wolfpack 4, Wolfpack 5, Wolfpack 7. This is Wolfpack 3. Remember, velocity and angles. Strike where he isn't looking. Execute. 530 hours. 4 Shermans advanced on 4 different forest trails, engines roaring, converging on the Panther's suspected position like the points of a closing diamond. Torres gripped the turret rail as Iron Duchess bounded over rutted logging roads at 26 miles per hour faster than doctrine ever prescribed through forest terrain. The entire plan depended on velocity and timing. Arrive too early and the Panther eliminates you alone. Arrive too late and your comrade's already burning. Arrive too early and the Panther eliminates you alone. Arrive too late and your comrade's already burning. Williams's voice crackled through the radio at 0530 precisely. Wolfpack 3, Wolfpack 7. This is Wolfpack 5, commencing frontal approach. Deploying smoke now. Through his commander's cupola, Torres couldn't observe Williams's Sherman, but he could visualize it advancing straight down the main trail while the gunner pumped white phosphorus rounds downrange at 1,100 yards. Thick smoke would be obscuring the Panther's position now, neutralizing those perfect size optics Klaus relied on. Torres heard the Panther fire that distinctive crack of the 75mm, followed by Williams's calm voice. Wolfpack 5. Missed wide by 20 feet. Continuing advance. Klaus was firing blind through smoke now, his greatest advantage neutralized. Torres checked his timepiece. 40 seconds until flanking position. Driver, maintain velocity. Gunner, prepare for target left, 550 yards. Tommy's voice came back steady. Ready, Sarge. Klaus's voice cut through the intercom inside the Panther, sharp with recognition. Sie flankieren, uns Fahrer, Norge, Retz Schwenken. but the Panther weighed 45 tons, and soft French soil wasn't concrete parade ground. The massive tank began its pivot laboriously, tracks churning mud, turret rotating to meet the new threat. Iron Duchess burst through a gap in the tree line at 550 yards, perfect side angle on the Panther's hull. Torres saw it clearly now for the first time, the sloped armor, the long 75mm barrel swinging toward them, the German cross painted on the turret. For one crystalline moment he understood what his factory calculations had missed. This wasn't just machinery, it was 45 tons of predatory intention. Target Panzer, side 550, Tommy shouted. Fire. The 75mm gun recoiled, the breech slamming backward as the armor-piercing round screamed downrange. Torres watched through his optics as the round struck the Panther's side hull, exactly where ammunition storage was located. Boom, sparks erupted. Metal shrieked, but when smoke cleared, the Panther was still mobile, still fighting. 50mm of side armor had held. Reload. But Klaus's turret was swinging toward them now. That massive 75mm tracking Iron Duchess like a predator's eye. Torres had perhaps 4 seconds before crack, but the sound originated from the wrong direction. Martinez's Sherman Wolfpack 4 had materialized at 500 yards from the opposite flank, exactly as planned. His 75mm round caught the Panther at the turret ring where armor thinned to 40mm. The impact sent shrapnel ricocheting inside the turret. Through his optics, Torres observed the Panther's main gun stop rotating mid-traverse, jammed. Klaus understood immediately what had occurred. They'd changed the geometry on him, transformed his strength into liability. He couldn't rotate the gun to engage Torres, couldn't pivot the hull fast enough to face Martinez. And Williams was pushing through smoke now at 350 yards. A third angle of attack. Plus Wolfpack 7 approaching from the fourth vector, Panzer Klaus S. Order cut through the German intercom with the finality of a man who recognized when mathematics had turned against him. Williams, Martinez, Torres, and Wolfpack 7 poured fire into the Panther's rear armor. 4 Shermans, 11 rounds, 18 seconds, overwhelming the German tank with volume and geometry. One round penetrated the engine deck. Fuel ignited. Flames erupted from the Panther's engine compartment. Black smoke billowing into morning sky. The German crew evacuated through hatches, hands raised, uniforms smeared with oil and smoke. Klaus was last out, standing beside his burning tank, observing for Sherman's surround the machine propaganda had called invincible. His hands were raised, but his face was composed. An engineer witnessing an elegant solution to a problem he'd believed had no answer. Torres ordered his driver forward, gun trained on the German crew. 60 yards separated them now. Close enough to see Klaus Richter clearly older than Torres expected, perhaps 35, with the bearing of a man who understood exactly what had just transpired. 6 years of propaganda had told Klaus that one Panther equaled 12 Shermans, but had just eliminated his invincible machine not by being superior, but by being intelligent. Torres was about to order his crew to dismount and secure prisoners when battalion radio crackled with Major Patterson's voice, urgent and strained. All Wolfpack units. Panther contact at Grid Romeo 83, requesting immediate support. Wolfpack 8 and Wolfpack 9 destroyed. Multiple casualties. Wolfpack 3, your closest unit. How copy? Torres's hand froze on the radio handset. Another Panther, 3 miles northwest. More Shermans burning, more crews dying. He looked at his fuel gauge. Half tank remaining. Ammunition counter, 78 rounds. His crew was exhausted, hands still trembling from adrenaline, but American tankers were dying while he sat here. He looked at Klaus Richter one more time, the enemy engineer who debuilt death machines but now understood the mathematics of defeat. And in that instant, Torres made a choice that would change everything. Torres made the decision in 4 seconds. He dropped from the turret, walked to Klaus Richter with his sidearm drawn, but pointed at the ground and asked in broken German, "Wie viele Panthers?" Klaus looked at him, really looked at him, and answered in accented English. 3 more, perhaps 4. You cannot engage them alone. Torres holstered his sidearm and turned to Williams. James, secure these prisoners with infantry support. Carlos, you're with me. Then he looked back at Klaus. You're coming with us. You're going to tell us how to eliminate them. Tommy's eyes went wide. Sarge, we can't, we can, and we will. Those are American crews dying right now. If he knows Panther vulnerabilities, we're utilizing that intelligence. Torres pulled zip restraints from his field kit. Hands forward, Hauptmann Klaus extended his wrists without resistance. As Torres secured them, Klaus spoke quietly. "You understand what you ask? For me to betray my own tactics? I understand I've got maybe 20 minutes before more of my guys burn to death in machines that coup on to protect them." Torres met Klaus's eyes. "You've got a choice. You can sit here as a prisoner, or you can help us fight intelligently instead of stupidly. Your decision." Klaus looked at his burning Panther, at Becker and the other crew members being guarded by American infantry, at the 4 Shermans that had just executed a flanking maneuver he'd never anticipated. Then he nodded once. "I will help, not because I betray Germany, because watching brave men die from inadequate doctrine, American or Germany's not engineering, it is murder." They raced toward grid Romeo 83 at 24 miles per hour. Klaus sitting in the tank commander's position beside Torres, hands zip-tied with Tommy's sidearm trained on him from the gunner seat. Martinez's Sherman followed 60 yards behind. The ride was deafening, engine roaring, tracks clanking, radio chatter crackling with frantic contact reports from the engagement ahead. Klaus leaned close to Torres's map, studying the terrain. The Panther will position hull down with overlapping fields of fire. Side armor is only 50 millimeters. You can penetrate at 700 yards if you strike cleanly. Turret traverse is our vulnerability. 25 seconds for full rotation with power, 45 without. He tapped coordinates on the map. "If I were commanding that Panther, I would be here. High ground, 4 approach lanes, forest concealment." "Why are you helping us?" Torres asked, not looking away from the map. Klaus was quiet for a moment, watching the French countryside blur past through the vision port. "Because this," he gestured at the burning fields, the destroyed tanks they passed, the smoke rising from a dozen different fires. "This is not what I studied engineering to create. I wanted to build bridges, hydroelectric dams, things that elevated civilization. Instead, I built this war, and your doctrine, sending brave men directly into 75 millimeters guns, because a manual dictates it. That is as much an engineering failure as any mechanical deficiency." At 0645 they reached the engagement zone. Wolfpack 8 was a smoking wreck in a clearing, turret severed. Wolfpack 9 was damaged but mobile, backing away from an unseen enemy position. Torres grabbed the radio. "Wolfpack 9, this is Wolfpack 3. Execute Georgia Gambit. I'll fix frontally with smoke. You flank from the northeast access road." "How copy?" The response came back shaky but willing. "Wolfpack 3, Wolfpack 9, copy Georgia Gambit. Standing by." Klaus provided ranges and angles as they advanced, his voice calm and precise, like he was teaching a university lecture instead of helping eliminate his own countrymen's equipment. 1,100 meters, load smoke. When you fire, he will rotate toward the threat. That gives your flanker 40 seconds before the turret can engage the new angle. Torres ordered the smoke rounds. White phosphorus bloomed across the Panther's position, obscuring vision just as it had with Klaus's own tank 2 hours earlier. Then Torres pushed Iron Duchess forward aggressively, drawing the Panther's attention while Martinez and Wolfpack 9 raced down parallel routes at maximum velocity. The attack unfolded exactly as planned. Torres fixed frontally. Wolfpack 9 flanked from the northeast at 26 miles per hour, struck the Panther's rear armor at 480 yards. 4 quick shots, engine kill. The German crew evacuated immediately, hands raised, recognizing the same tactical defeat Klaus had experienced. As MPs arrived to secure the second Panther's crew, a new tank rolled into the clearing. Different silhouette, longer gun barrel, a Sherman Firefly from British 11th Armored Division. The commander, Captain Harrington, dismounted and surveyed the scene with approval. "Bloody brilliant flanking work, Yank." Harrington patted his Firefly's 17-pounder gun. "But next month you won't need the elaborate footwork. This gun can eliminate a Panther frontally at 1,200 yards. One shot straight through. We're mass-producing them now." Torres looked at the long 17-pounder, then at Klaus. Klaus nodded slowly, understanding immediately. "So the innovation becomes standard. That is how wars are won. Effective ideas become doctrine." As MPs led Klaus away, the German officer turned back. "Sergeant Torres, your factory you said Pennsylvania." "Yes, my factory was Henschel in Cassel. We both built machines of war." Perhaps afterward he didn't finish, but Torres understood. Torres extended his hand. They shook briefly, formally to engineers who'd spent the morning rewriting the mathematics of survival. Tommy watched his paperback still tucked under his arm, understanding that sometimes dignity mattered more than propaganda, even in defeat. 4 months later, Torres's Georgia Gambit flanking tactic appeared in official U.S. Armored Forces field manual. Sherman Firefly production reached 850 units by January. Panthers were no longer invincible, just targets with documented vulnerabilities. And in December, Torres received correspondence from the Red Cross. Klaus Richter was alive in a POW camp in England, teaching Allied interrogators about German tank engineering, including a sketch of 2 engineers constructing something other than weapons, a bridge, a dam, anything but death. Torres sat in his tent that evening, writing to Maria. Today I learned something the propaganda never taught. Wars aren't won by the best machines, but by the best thinking, and sometimes even enemies can teach you how to win. He looked at Tommy's notebook sketch for Sherman's surrounding one Panther, the impossible geometry that had changed everything, and finally felt like the mathematics made sense.